Oh wow, I can't wait to watch the Crunchyroll Anime Awards for this year. I'm so excited to see Frieren or maybe Apothecary Diaries take home Anime of the Year this year. Well, let's take a look through the contestants, see what the scores are. Hey, look back, one film of the year. That's awesome. Oh, Demon Slayer, you silly goose, winning Best Continuing Series, you. Ooh, ReZero got Best Isekai, deserved. Alex Lee won Best Voice Actor for his role in Solo Leveling. I didn't watch the dub, but I've heard he's really good. Oh, Solo Leveling also won Best Action. You know what, I can get that. I understand that, I can get behind that. The fights are pretty cool. Yo, Solo Leveling also won Best Score. Wait, that can't be right. Was it really better than Dandadan? Or Evan Call with Frieren? Because that was amazing. Even Look Back's Haruka Nakamura knocked it out of the park. Maybe I'm missing something here. Oh, Best Main Character.
Ready?
Sung Jin Woo from Solo Leveling.
Congratulations to Sung Jin-woo and
Really? Over Momo? Mao Mao? Frieren? Okarun? Oh no. Oh no.
And the anime award goes to...
Oh no.
Solo Leveling.
Well, I guess it's no secret that I'm a pretty big Frieren and Apothecary Diaries fan. I was honestly really excited for this season of awards because, well, both of these shows would be up for some pretty big titles, and even though I'm a bit more of a Frieren fan, I would have been happy if either won. Hell, a lot of the lineup for this year was pretty based. Not every win was undeserved. But in my poor naivete and my hubris, assuming that these shows I liked would win, I made a declaration on Twitter and on stream that if Solo Leveling ended up winning Anime of the Year at the Crunchyroll Awards, I would crash out. And of course, not only did Solo Leveling win Anime of the Year, it swept. Now, before this crash out timer up in the top corner of your screen hits 0, I would like to make one thing abundantly clear. Solo Leveling is an anime adaptation of a highly popular manhwa, and it is, for an adaptation, really good. The animation, the sound design team, voice actors, directors, everyone who made this anime did a phenomenal job. No argument I'm about to give, no joke I'm about to tell, no critique I can say is aimed at this team in any way. Not only did they bring Solo Leveling to anime in a way that did its fans and its source material justice, and at points 100% elevated it from the manhwa, these people did a phenomenal job, and their passion for making this the best anime they could shows in nearly every episode, and for that, they deserve all of the praise. But as amazing as this team did, and again, they did amazing, at the end of the day, an anime's strength of narrative and personality is only as good as its source material, and in this case, all I can say is that this meme that we used to joke about for Jujutsu Kaisen and Bleach and all the other battle animes where we start to say they're all carried by animation and aura and hype, Solo Leveling is unironically, literally, that all aura and hype meme. At its very core, Solo Leveling has a really interesting concept. Looking past its pseudo-video game isekai-like setting, the concept of a world where everyone has a predetermined strength number that cannot change and basically determines your entire place in society is a really malleable concept. A game where you literally aren't allowed to level up. Of course, there are some really specific exceptions in this story, but overall, this limited power level has some really interesting questions. Is a hunter's rank all that matters in society. Does a class system emerge? How much can higher ranked materials and better strategies compensate for a lack of strength? Can our protagonist, who is literally the weakest man alive, somehow use his wits or skill or heart to move up in a world that began with the odds just stacked against him and will never be in his favor? You know what that sounds like to me, dear viewers? That sounds like one of my favorite animes of all time, Re:Zero. A Re:Zero style protagonist and plot with some chances for some really cool problem solving, high stakes political intrigue, an interesting supporting cast, and it's a power fantasy, isn't it? It's going to be a power fantasy.
All right, Jagoff.
Granted, to call Solo Leveling solely a power fantasy slop would be a little untrue. Jinwoo begins his journey to hero doing something rather heroic, sacrificing himself to save his friends, in a trap only he figures out the answer to, but still. And then he does have to work hard to begin improving himself once he realizes the implication that he can level up and the system is forcing him to do so. He works hard, he puts his life on the line, and though you know he'll be fine, it's that video game style grind that we all kinda identify with that's really compelling. This doe-eyed, innocent Jinwoo doing his best in the world is probably my favorite version of him because he's not just out here sweeping bosses and aura farming like it's his hobby. He's out here sweeping bosses and aura farming because his life depends on it. He's a jobber trying to get by with a relatively sympathetic goal of curing his mother and the hope that he can provide for his family. It's early in the story and there's still plenty of time for him to develop relationships, explore the political system, try out new gear, and all that really good video game style content this world sets out or seems to set out to be. But the problem hits with Solo Leveling and many other power fantasies is that if your character becomes way too powerful before you can even get a chance to explore the world you create, you begin losing chances to see how that world, how that system usually operates, especially for our point of view character. Instead, we get a lot of really quick and or half-assed explanations of the new bad guy or organization that our protagonist is going to break in 2 minutes by simply being in the same room as said system. So what's the point of learning about rankings or level ups or loot or any of that if it literally doesn't matter? In my opinion, the stronger Jinwoo gets in Solo Leveling, the worse the show becomes narratively. Early on, Jinwoo really struggles to find his footing, taking extreme risks alone in a system he doesn't understand and that no one can help him with, against monsters that would easily kill him just a few weeks ago, but now he can barely make it by. Some of the early fights, like him against the giant snake monster, or spider, or giant dogs, or even the knight fight from the end of season 1, have a good amount of tension, especially if you don't know where the story is going, with Jinwoo really needing to go all out in life or death battle just to survive. It's not all strategy, which I would have preferred to see a little bit more, but the animation and the team and the voice acting really sells it. But cracks in the formula begin to appear early. Most of the fights Jinwoo does end up winning aren't because he comes up with said interesting last-minute strategy or plays to his strengths exactly or abuses the system multiple times in creative ways. Often he just kinda gets lucky or simply powers through his enemy with pure force of will, and that's not a terrible thing early on. There can be leeway in Ex Machina. But I can't deny I was a little disappointed that the fight against a knight who guards the empty throne was based more on just Jinwoo catching the knight slightly off guard and stabbing him a bunch, rather than anything else. And as the future fights go on, they do get a whole lot flashier, and the animation definitely shows Jinwoo struggling a bit more than the manhwa. Again, shout out to the team doing an amazing job elevating the source material. The actual struggle that Jinwoo faced early on in his journey seems to fade away. Instead of growing at the same rate as his challenges, he begins to grow exponentially. Instead of getting cool and creative powers, he gets a few really overpowered abilities. Arise, stun, speed rush the enemy, take no damage from a hit. If you don't take damage, heal yourself with a potion only you can use. Raise the dead, become OP, teleport, repeat. The Ice Elf fight, the Orc fight, the Demon King fight, the Ant fight all follow a similar pattern despite being the penultimate fights of those arcs. Sure, there's a few extra flavors, like Jinwoo summoning the orcs he's killed in a fight. That's kind of pretty cool. Or Jinwoo reviving a guy who hates him as a servant. That has horrifying implications that they never really discuss, but it is neat. Like, is he the same guy now? What about his family? Does he have free will? Oh, he was evil, so we don't actually need to discuss any of that and it's morally okay? Got it. By the end of Season 2, with the ant fight, the problem that has been alluded to since the beginning of the first season is ended with barely a sweat from Jinwoo. He swoops in, leagues above everyone else in power, and virtually solves all of the issues all of the teams face, and the bad evil hunters who are clearly evil fail, and everything is happy. And this is where solo leveling's greatest problem appears. Solo leveling is afraid of telling an interesting story, so it doesn't. The entire focus on solo leveling, despite its multiple named characters, organizations, and supposedly worldwide spanning consequences and organizations, is entirely on Jinwoo. He is the end-all be-all of this story. And because of that, the story feels terribly small despite involving multiple world governments. His exponential growth makes him the strongest character by default before Season 2 is even halfway over, so the introduction of new hunters really never poses a threat to him. Every ally character besides maybe his sister and his mother basically revere him as a god, or at least their savior once they realize how strong he is. No enemy he faces survives their encounter, so there is no overarching villain who can keep pushing Jinwoo to new heights or at least challenge his supremacy. And now, thanks to his shadow soldiers and his teleportation basically making his regular soldiers stronger than the vast majority of A and S rank fighters, the only people capable of fighting any serious threat in this story are either him or his nameless, voiceless minions, short of his three main guys, which renders every single other named character as either a jobber or someone for Jinwoo to save. Oh, he also has an unofficial harem too, but he's too cool to really care about that. Which is, by the way, the one S-rank hunter Korean girl who hates all the other people's smells but also likes his smell, so he's some kind of chosen one. It's, like, not subtle at all. This whole setup of overpowered characters saving the day is not an unusual power fantasy trope, but I think it really hits solo leveling hard because Jinwoo's personality is such a voidless hole. We barely know anything beyond the fact that he was once the weakest, he would do anything for his family, that's about it. But the emotional progression from here to here is just, like, not there. I understand Jinwoo is supposed to be jaded, not only from the severe PTSD of constantly being on the edge of death, but also from his time as the player, a person chosen by a mysterious system of this world to be the only person to level up. The system forces him to do tasks, to kill humans at times, but conveniently only the bad ones and in acts of self-defense, and level up. And there's a lot that could be done here, but we see so little of who he was before the system, and his personality once he grows a few inches and changes his haircut. He seems so legitimately like a different person, we don't get a feel of loss in his supposed lack of humanity the show is trying to drill into our heads at times. It might make more sense if some of his old personalities shone through more in the day-to-day, or if there was more of an air of tragedy around his coldness, but it's just not there, because that wouldn't be cool. That wouldn't be aura farming. He does at times question his humanity and morality, but more in the Shadow the Hedgehog kind of way, and not in the true, introspective, have I gone too far kind of way. Also, as a slight side tangent, I think all of Jinwoo's human villains being irredeemable monsters okay with murdering innocent people really hurts his potential disillusionment with humanity, because every instant, again, he is forced to kill a human is in clear self-defense and to save not only himself, but others. It's always heroic, no matter how much dark and sinister music plays or how much his eyes glow, Jinwoo is never in the wrong. How much more interesting would it be if the system forced him to fight innocent hunters to gain levels, or kill a human who might arguably be a good person or a friend? Food for thought. I think what really pains me about solo leveling is that it's more than possible to create an incredibly overpowered MC who everyone underestimates, who is both an interesting character surrounded by other equally interesting characters and has a compelling story. It's been done before. My favorite example is One Punch Man Season 1. It's literally one of the greatest shows I've ever seen, and it has all of that. A main character whose personality is more than just is the strongest, wins fights. Saitama enjoys supermarket deals, lives frugally, is both disillusioned with his strength but still, despite it all, committed to being a hero. And he's surrounded by characters who have personalities, goals, and dreams that have nothing to do with Saitama, except maybe Genos, but Genos is a fascinating character study anyway, and way more interesting than this kiss-ass. Saitama, One Punch Man, is undeniably the strongest hero physically, but One Punch Man is not afraid to use its supporting cast to ask some real questions about what it means to be strong, to be a hero. In a society constantly on the brink of collapse, try as you might, you will not find a single character in Solo Leveling with half the soul and weight as Moomin Rider, standing in the pouring rain as a child cries out for him to save them, and despite knowing he won't even be able to scratch the monster, he fights anyway. And in the final episode of Season 1, when Saitama fights Boros, this fight isn't simply to reaffirm he is the strongest and nothing else matters, it's to show that with overwhelming strength and no real challenge, there is a loss of fulfillment in Saitama's life, a hole that he cannot fill that's plagued him since the very first episode. What is the point of being strong if you're never truly trying? When passion runs out and all you do is go through the motions. Sound familiar?
I knew that this would happen. Why does this always happen? I think I'm gonna have a breakdown!
Now, let's do a real deep dive into the character of Jinwoo as best main character, which probably pains me the most. I mentioned before that I found Jinwoo to be sort of a voidless personality, and that is a little unfair. When we first meet him, Jinwoo has 3 defining character points. He is the weakest, his mother is sick and he's supporting his family, he's both relatively smart and selfless. All of those traits are both how Jinwoo ends up bloodied at the pedestal at the end of episode 2. His self-sacrificing nature allowing others to escape, but his weakness also preventing him from the solution that saves him. All of these are pretty strong opening characteristics for protagonists you want to root for. There's also something sort of endearing about Jinwoo's early design. His shaggy hair and lanky body definitely paint him as more of a pushover, but also sort of an everyman. Honestly, it kind of makes sense why Juhi sees something in him. Yeah, he's a bit of a self-deprecating guy, but he's a good person who loves and constantly risks his life for his family. They both kind of hate dungeon life, and because she's constantly saving his life, they've probably grown pretty close. Kind of sad that it looks like Sniffer Girl is going to become endgame, because I really liked her. But as the story goes on, that naivete and awkward nature is replaced by a towering, intimidating Slav that really only shows his emotion at very specific points, such as when he cries after his mother awakens from a coma. A touching scene that's beautifully animated and voice acted, but it really just doesn't hit home as it should. Since, well, it's hard to explain. Probably doesn't help that all the people who do watch it for the aura farming were kind of clowning on it, and it's one of the lowest ranked episodes of Solo Leveling. They really did try, but I see why it didn't work, so I'm going to do a quick comparison with a scene from an anime that did almost make me cry, a scene that's very similar in context. From the ReZero episode, I cried my lungs out, and stopped crying. In Solo Leveling's scene, Jinwoo has finally made the potion after going through all of the demon world to wake his mother up from the sickness that plagues his society. His mother wakes up while he's asleep, smiles at him, comments on how mature her son is now after all this time, and says, "You must have pushed yourself too hard. You must have had a hard time." And undeniably in the context of being the weakest person ever, it's likely Jinwoo did have a hard time, and this scene does have emotion to it. But at this point, in episode 9 of season 2, Jinwoo is the strongest. He's cleared out enemies with barely a scratch. He has little trouble killing the Demon King by himself, and he did it. It's been a long time since the person he was before the system acknowledged him has been even referenced, and rarely does Jinwoo reflect on any of the psychological trauma of everything he's gone through, to the point where it seems like he doesn't have it. The anime really only focuses on the physical stuff and almost nothing from the many, many years he was an E rank. That part of his life has basically been abandoned narratively, except as a convenient way for others to underestimate him. Showing scenes of Jinwoo really struggling as an E rank, or the stress he might have felt under the system, or maybe examples of PTSD he gets from killing monsters that maybe he's been ignoring this whole time, would add more content to his tears. But right now, we see a man who's basically won the lottery multiple times over, crying about events we haven't seen affect him mentally almost at all before. And while the scene will likely hit close to people who have family members in hospital or chronic disease, and I'm glad people enjoy that scene, the emotional impact of "you must have had a hard time" means very little to me. In ReZero, the moment Emilia asks Subaru, "It's been rough, hasn't it?" hits both him and the audience like a punch to the gut. In this context, and in the director's cut context, because that's what I watched, for the past 8-hour-long episodes, Subaru has been transported to a new world for seemingly no discernible reason, has had to watch everybody around him who's shown him kindness in this new world die or kill him as well. He has been through some of the most immense psychological and physical pain any teenage boy could ever go through in 10 lifetimes, let alone his single. And not once in those 8 episodes has he had time to rest. He has not even known anyone longer than a few days who could comfort him or talk to him in any way. He literally cannot talk to people about his powers or the things he has seen, because if he tells people he returns by death, he will die. He hasn't known any peace for weeks. So when Emilia acknowledges his pain, as bittersweet as it is since she hasn't the slightest idea about the full context of it, the way Subaru breaks down crying, trying to explain to her through tears all of the pain and sadness he's faced, and you can tell he's worried he'll sound crazy. He knows he can't tell her everything, but the fact that he can say anything at all, it hurts so much I thought I'd die. I was so desperate to make everything right. I've honestly never tried so hard at anything in my life. I was so scared. I hated myself so much for feeling that way. Like, I have tears in my eyes because I'm rewatching the scene again, and it's cathartic and it's devastating, and it's what Jinwoo's scene could have been, because Subaru and ReZero is, in my opinion, a different route from the same starting point as Solo Leveling. The weakest man in this world, instead of getting an OP killing power and becomes the savior of the world, gets a very specific power to redo everything and all of the pain and consequences it causes, and has to work through that pain, both mentally and physically, to try to save the ones he loves. There's something so infinitely tragic about Subaru that's lost with Jinwoo. In every way, Jinwoo is better off than he was in episode 1. Whereas Subaru may be a hero, but what he's lost in the meantime, his family, his iterations of friends, his memories and his experiences, is a real and tangible loss, and no power or item on Earth can ever bring it back. Maybe this was just my opinion or an excuse to talk about ReZero that I love, but the difference between the two just kinda struck me, and I have a special place in my heart for any character who can bring me to the edge of tears. Outside of that scene, we kinda lose the character that was Jinwoo for the character that is Solo Leveling Man. And not through any real specific arc. Like, his uncaring aloofness somewhat makes sense narratively, as he's worried exposing his power might draw unwanted attention. But in turn, Jinwoo loses essentially everything that makes him relatable. He just becomes the older brother archetype. There are no quiet moments of personality, really, and because he essentially has no friends or rivals to riff off of, every bit of introspection we see from Jinwoo is just him going over his own thoughts in his mind, kind of absent-mindedly. No one challenges his perspective, no one challenges his change in persona, they just kind of accept it. Praise him, never criticize his lateness to the Ant Raid Island or his revival of the other humans. Sure, sometimes a hunter says that they need to monitor him and Jinwoo just threatens them or ignores them. He's become that edgy OC that's still also a good guy at his heart. But we know so little about him in these 2 seasons. We don't know his favorite book, we don't know his favorite foods, what he does with his sister in their free time, what his pet peeves or quirks are. 1 season into Demon Slayer, I can tell you 5 things about Tanjiro. He takes pride in his sister, he's great with kids, he has a bad habit of breaking and losing his priceless swords, he's incredibly humble, almost too much so for his own good, he has a great sense of smell. Itadori Yuji is a track star who likes Jennifer Lawrence's personality, has an aversion to killing humans, even transmutated ones, suffers with self-doubt, likes to prank his friends at inappropriate times. Saitama was a salaryman who dreamed of being a hero, loves a good deal on fish, is willing to give up his fame to help out other heroes who don't appreciate him, but even so wants more than anything to have a good fight and to be acknowledged as a good hero by the people he actually respects. Oh, and he's also just a good hanging out with buddy. Jinwoo, after his transformations, loves his family, enjoys fighting and getting stronger, and is kind of oblivious to women and his friends, and wants more money for his family, and is a good person. Like, granted, I'm a little biased here, but I've watched and read a good portion of the manhwa, and there's nothing about Jinwoo that stands out to me as interesting. Even his design, although kinda nice in his simplicity, is generic. I mean, this is your MC, the guy who swings 2 blades and uses his OP abilities to save the day. It's clear the children yearn for SAO. At least even years later, I can tell you Kazuto was at least memorable in his cringe and his angst and his love for video games and his weird little fairy daughter. He had friends and stakes. To say Jinwoo is above Frieren and Mao Mao, look, I know it's a popularity contest, but come on. Your character arc can't be washing your character of all of his personality. You can have dark, you can have edgy, you can have a loss of humanity, but you just can't say it happens. You have to show us the ramifications on the psyche of that person and the people around him. But when you just keep introducing us to new people who always acted the same way and throw the old people to the wayside to just gawk at Jinwoo, then you get nothing. It's as if the start of the story didn't happen at all. So why? What makes Solo Leveling so amazing that it swept the awards, had people unironically calling it Anime of the Year? Well, now it is undeniable that Solo Leveling has great animation. Its fight scenes are flashy, well done. The rise of the monsters and seeing a full-scale battle in anime, even without any real tactics by Jinwoo, is still cool. I get it. Action is probably the most popular media genre out there for anime fans. It makes sense. It would appeal to the widest base, and it's not a bad thing that action anime can win Anime of the Year. I'm no snob. If a show is good, it doesn't matter what genre it is. Action, thriller, slice of life, I'll praise it all the same. But what I'm about to say may be considered a hot take by most anime standards, and I'll say it nonetheless. I think Solo Leveling's fights are boring. That's right, I think Solo Leveling's fights are boring. Concept-wise, narrative-wise, character-wise. Boring. Very few of Jinwoo's fights are strategic in any way. Nearly all of them are him charging headfirst into battle and either barely surviving by using a single item or loophole, or Demon Woman chucking a spear to assist him ever so briefly, or he just curb stomps it regardless. Each combat is solved via brute force. Even when he gains Shadow Soldiers, the greatest strategy he can come up with is giving some of his casters better casting magic. There's no sneak attacks, no actual army engagements, no trying to figure out a monster's weakness ahead of time and exploiting it like a video game. Maybe occasionally he'll swap a weapon, but all fights really go one of two ways. Jinwoo smokes the opponent by his minions or by speed and strength blitzing, like the ice elves, the orcs, or the ants, or the opponent is strong and eventually something small happens that allows Jinwoo to scream loudly and brutalize his enemies. Serpent, Dog, Knight, Demon Lord. The only clever mechanics I remember him using was him accidentally being sent to the penalty zone to escape an encounter, which admittedly is actually pretty smart. But what's not as cool is the penalty zone has virtually no drawbacks at this point and just allows Jinwoo to buff himself before finishing the fight. With so many weapons and revived monsters at his disposal, there's so much Jinwoo could potentially do tactic-wise. Really mix and match his bag. But no, daggers and some minions and a magic hand are cool, but repetitive. Narrative-wise, after Season 1, very few fights progress the overall narrative or story of Solo Leveling in any meaningful way. There's some lore drops here and there, and sure, the reveal of Jinwoo's powers and the battle at Ant Island do progress the world forward, but the saving of his mother doesn't really change how Jinwoo acts, and the dungeons where the lore drop happens aren't really necessary in their current design for any particular reason. Orcs, elves, demon, ants, none of these races at any moment play any meaningful role in the story because by its nature, Solo Leveling is essentially a roguelike, which means no recurring enemies, no stories from their perspective, at least at this point in time, and therefore what the enemies are, what battles happen with them, don't really mean anything. Honestly, the only recurring battle, the Ant Island fight, only somewhat affects a few side characters, and while it does end in the death of this dude, the fact that I haven't even remembered his name or bothered to check it right now just shows you how relevant he was to the narrative. And because Jinwoo is really the only person you, the viewer, even remotely cares about in these fights, and you know he's going to win, there aren't really any progression stakes. There are no narrative stakes, period. Nothing that Jinwoo could lose beside his life, and this show is way too popular for a dark turn like that. And to clarify, when the lore drops happen, whether it's by the orcs or the demons, it doesn't matter that they are orcs or demons. You could swap any of these fights in any order and change the difficulty, and narratively, it wouldn't change the story. Because they don't matter. Once you leave the dungeon, whatever happens inside rarely counts for anything outside of that one crazy dude that was killed and Jinwoo getting some levels. Character-wise, I'd argue that virtually none of the fights post-Season 1 even progress Jinwoo's character in any meaningful way. Sure, some of the fights change the status quo of the world a little, but not really a character arc. The Ice Elves fight, the Orc fights, the Demon King fight, the Ant fight don't change Jinwoo's perspective or challenge his point of view. It just gives him more toys and abilities to stomp the enemies with. He doesn't begin to wonder if maybe the things he's fighting are sentient and don't actually really want to fight humans, or maybe he kind of understands that, but that doesn't change his willingness to slaughter them. Replace any of these monsters with literally any other in any order, and it generally will not affect Jinwoo's character in the slightest. Sure, killing the Demon King allows Jinwoo to heal his mother, but again, replace the Demon King with an alien god or a mole queen or anything. Nothing about his mother's cure necessitated he fight a Demon King, and in no way is it representative of his growth besides just being another power level for him to surpass and a general type of monster that most people recognize from an RPG. No creature cursed his mom, no inflection point at his character, just a dungeon to grind and win an item. No back and forth, no test of resolve, and almost none of the monsters talk at all. There isn't even any really interesting dialogue outside of those lore drops in the elves and orc fights. And in the orc fight and ant fight, that was more just so that these talking creatures could glaze Jinwoo's strength. And this wouldn't nearly be as much of an issue again if Solo Leveling allowed its supporting cast in on the action in any meaningful way. By the time new S ranks are introduced, there's really nothing they can do. Nowhere they can be that Jinwoo can't complete himself, and none of them really have any arcs besides maybe Tiger Dude, whose arc seems to be trust Jinwoo and be less of a stick in the mud. If these people actually got a chance to fight and have any kind of progression besides thinks Jinwoo is a little sus to thinks Jinwoo is so hot they want to kiss him, then maybe the action wouldn't have to do so much heavy lifting. And what I hate most about calling Solo Leveling boring, what I hate about all of these complaints is that it made me realize that at the end of the day, the anime that won Anime of the Year last year, Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, is just a better solo leveling in virtually every single category. JJK is the original "Do you have a story? No, we have hype moments in aura" meme, and I kinda get why. There's not a lot of outward politicking in JJK, the machinations of its characters are rather straightforward, and the recent ending of the manga hasn't done a lot to dissuade many people's fears that towards the end of it, Geijei was probably a bit rushed and tired of the whole thing. Jujutsu Kaisen is not perfect, but oh my god, is it hard to deny that up until the ending of Shibuya, Jujutsu Kaisen is some of the most interesting, engaging, and at points legitimately mysterious anime out there. Let's go through some of the similarities between the two and establish some sort of base for this comparison I'm about to lay out so you guys can follow me. Both Solo Leveling and Jujutsu Kaisen are action anime. Both feature an overpowered protagonist, or in Jujutsu Kaisen's case, pseudo-protagonist, a level system that determines one's place in society, a corrupt internal system, magic weapons and abilities, monsters that really only certain ranks have strong enough chances of defeating. Both were praised for their action, both were praised for their hype moments, arise, domain expansion. But let's stop for a quick second and do a really important test. You, viewer, name 5 solo leveling characters. Now, you viewer, name 5 Jujutsu Kaisen characters. To put it simply, Jujutsu Kaisen characters are leagues above solo leveling. In character arcs, in character designs, in story stakes, in villains, and specifically in villains, it's nowhere close. In protagonists, in battle concepts, very few people, or at least no one I've seen, does solo leveling power scaling or theories of who could have beaten Beru under different circumstances or anything, because the part that should make solo leveling interesting, its leveling cap, kneecaps its side characters' abilities to impact any real battle. When you fodderize S ranks and don't give them any really interesting personality outside of said fodderization, then no one will care to remember their names. Alternatively, nearly every character in Jujutsu Kaisen is leagues below Gojo and Sukuna, but that does not stop the power rankings and the theories because of 2 things. 1, each character is so wildly different in fighting style and power that even if their power level is low, there are always possibilities that their odd niche could make them helpful. 2, each character, even though they aren't usually given a ton of time to develop in the story, is unique and interesting, and that doesn't just apply to the main characters, it applies to the villains too. In fact, one of Jujutsu Kaisen's greatest strengths is the fact that its villains frequently survive, even if they aren't the strongest around, and that gives us the beauty of Shibuya. Multiple different characters of different power levels fighting different matchups in different styles. Gojo versus the Disaster Curses, a timetable slaughter with the goal of defeating the curses fast enough or capturing Gojo Satoru. Students versus the Disaster Curses, a fleeing fight to try to save themselves against a monster. The Siblings versus the Smallpox Curse, a timing puzzle that utilizes the abilities to their total extent. Mahito versus Mekamaru, a desperate ploy by a dying kid to end the war before it even begins. Chozo versus Yuji, a bare-knuckle vengeance brawl in a neon-lit subway. Sukuna versus Jogo, an absolute hellfire blast of desperation. Sukuna versus Mahoraga, an unmovable object meets an unstoppable force. Yuji and Todo versus Mahito, one last push to destroy a monster that has torn away at Yuji's humanity for the last 2 seasons in the face of so much carnage and so much despair. Toji versus the most ride or die rabbits you've ever seen. Every single one of these fights in Jujutsu Kaisen is wildly different. Everyone is memorable, everyone has been someone's favorite, everyone consists of a new character doing new things and new matchups, and often the good guys lose or die. The stakes are high because everyone is expendable and everyone except Gojo is 100% out of their depth, but Gojo isn't around to save them anymore. So they have to do what they must. In solo leveling, it is the exact opposite. Everyone is expendable, not because they are out of their depth, but because there's nothing they can do anyway. So the stakes are low because Jinwoo is around to save everyone. They just need to not get in trouble and to get out of his way. In Solo Leveling, you know how a fight will begin and end before it even starts. In Jujutsu Kaisen, you'd be lucky to even guess half of what happens at any point in a fight. And that's why it's so painful to see people react to Jinwoo as a man with hype and aura. Hype and aura? I'll be the first one to say it. Jinwoo does have aura about him, but he lost his hype a long time ago. Real aura and hype are not just standing there mean-mugging the enemy because you know you're going to win because your power level is greater than someone else's. It's walking into a fight knowing you're going to do whatever the hell you can, the best you can, and leave nothing off the table because you have to, because you are the best. As Tien from Team 4 Star says it best,
Power levels! Super Saiyans! And you! Shin Kiko! Oh, that's a Dora Shin!
real aura and hype is a buildup of everything we've seen before. It's the little things, the big things, the psychology, the physicality. In Jujutsu Kaisen, it's Todo walking in on a despondent Yuji mid-fight, spouting poetry and ready to lock in on a fight we have no idea they can win. In Frieren, it's when Frieren's clone, half dead, missing its arm, just stares at Fern and nearly kills her. In Demon Slayer, it's Tengen jumping in out of nowhere, missing an arm and slowly dying of poison to fight a demon on equal footing. It's Boros with his last breaths telling Saitama, "So much for prophecies, you were too strong," as Saitama walks away from an exploding spaceship. Hype and aura is whenever the temperature of a room shifts to a direction so drastically from before it leaves the room either chilled into silence or audibly cheering. It can be sad, it can be horrifying, it can be awesome, it just can't be boring. In Solo Leveling, you know at all times what's going to happen. The animation will be amazing, that is true, but the situation from Season 1 to 2, monster appears, no one can fight it, Jinwoo swoops in, saves the day by being the strong person. That's it. That's everything. Every time. Well, sometimes he summons a new person, but that raw, unfiltered aura, that hype, it just isn't there like it should be. Maybe it's true that Gojo and Frieren are both serial aura farmers, but I think there's a major narrative difference between all three of them, which makes the latter two much more compelling as characters. And that's that even though in their respective immediate stories both Frieren and Gojo are the strongest, in the wider world they are not. And their strength cannot solve everything on their own. Gojo's strength is defined by his failure. Failure to protect the people he cares about, failure to protect his students, the constant question of, is he who he is because he is the strongest, or is he the strongest because he just happened to be born who he is? Regardless of how the manga ended, Gojo's origin and purpose in the story is infinitely fascinating. And Frieren is fascinating too because she is both not the strongest in her universe, and also could easily be beaten by someone who isn't technically even as strong as her based on a bad matchup. Her strength is her knowledge and her students. Funny enough, kinda like Gojo. They are both failures and successes even with their strengths, complex characters with friends, family, and though the world changes because of them, the story and its people don't purely live for them. Jinwoo has no weakness in his strength. He is the strongest by a mile. Nothing can beat him. No human comes close. He will save his family, and they will have no agency in that. He will protect a few specific side characters who revere him as a god. He has an unquestioning loyal army that kind of have goofy personalities. He has everything. The entire world is at his beck and call, and it must, because if it doesn't, everyone will die, and that's just so boring. Stray thoughts. Solo Leveling the anime does try to be more. The anime gives it a real shot. That scene with Jinwoo crying when his mom wakes up is on a technical level really well done, and I wanted to care, I really did. But it felt shallow. Maybe if this scene emphasized how Jinwoo's badass nature and aloofness was actually all a front because he doesn't want to lose anyone anymore, or that even with all of his power, he's still at his heart that shy, scared kid who didn't ask to be put in the role of essentially a god, or maybe he realizes this cure he has created for an incurable disease might now save other people's lives so other E-ranks don't have to go through the horrors and pain he had to. Wait a second. Why isn't Jinwoo interacting with like any E-ranks on a serious capacity outside of just like general job function? Wouldn't it be interesting to see him be the champion of the E-ranks, showing them that their place in society doesn't have to be stuck at manual laborers risking their lives for little to no pay? Or maybe he uses his power to give back to others like him. But that would require Solo Leveling to engage with its own worlds and concepts of class division and unequal wealth that it seems almost allergic to the idea. Hi, thanks for watching. It's been a while. If you've seen my stuff before, I did have, believe it or not, a couple of other videos planned and halfway through before I ended up just kind of scrapping them because I didn't like them. And that left me with almost a year-long hole. So sorry for that. If you liked this video at all, feel free to leave a like or comment something stupid, even completely irrelevant, because it helps the algorithm a lot, especially with YouTube's kind of weird vibes right now. But yeah, and if you really liked what I've done and want to see more 45-minute long exposés about my favorite animes, hit that subscribe button. You don't have to, but I appreciate it. If you want more of me in the interim, I'm on Twitch, and you can see me stream stuff like Silksong or play on a Cobblemon server as a gym leader. Again, thank you so much for watching and for sticking around. I appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!